So it looks like it's finally crept up on us, the EU referendum. We know it's been coming for a while, but it's imminent now. So obviously we've got the Tory party split between the Brexiters and the Remainers. We've got the Labour Party who want to remain. We've got the media telling us to remain. We've got the BBC especially telling us to remain. In fact, the BBC have been telling us that apparently people who want to leave the EU are of a sort of lower social class than everyone else, and they're slightly less intelligent than everyone else, apparently. It's very strange, really, considering that the people who want to remain seem to be just soaking up all this constant propaganda as to what we should do. Now, it's funny because we seem to have two sides of the argument here. And at the moment in the media, this has been played out purely as an economic argument, maybe with a dash of immigration concerns as well. But really, this shouldn't really be about economics, because the economics are quite simple, really. Yes, we have loads more money because of immigration. The more immigrants who come and work here, the more taxes paid, and the more money we have. But at the same time, so is our tax bill. You know, the cost of public services, the cost of the NHS, the rises in house prices, all these things are kind of soaked up by that advantage. So you have to ask yourself, what's an economy for? Is it to work for the people, or is it to just ever increasing growth? That's up to you, really. The truth of the matter is, the real truth of the matter is, no matter what we do, whether we stay in the EU or we leave the EU, there's going to be an economic impact purely based upon the uncertainty. You know, investors don't know what's going to happen, so that is going to cause problems. But, having said that, despite all of that, if we leave, there of course is going to be a cost. There is bound to be a cost. There has to be. You know, it stands to reason that there'd be a cost. But we're well placed for that. You know, we have the pound. We're not a member. We don't use the euro. So it's not like when Scotland went for independence, where it was just literally economic suicide. We are very well placed to, if we want, to leave. And I think the truth of the matter is, really, real world, it's not going to make that much difference either way. It's really a question of what you really want. As I said, there's going to be an impact regardless. So, how do you feel? What do you value? Do you value democracy? Do you value sovereignty? Or do you value money? And it's very interesting here, because you hear upon the sort of almost left versus right argument here, and the left seem to be slightly schizophrenic in the way that they're going about this, because on the one hand, the left want devolved powers. They want, you know, power to local county councils, for instance. They want there to be proportional representation a lot of the time. And yet, at the same time, they want to be a member of this huge kind of conglomerate of countries, and that we don't really have much democratic say in. I mean, you can say, yeah, we get to vote in the EU, but I'm sorry, when you're the second largest economy in a massive block of countries, which we are, with the most advanced armed forces in that block of countries, why the hell is a country like, I don't know, Sweden or Italy or Spain got the same say as us? Bearing in mind it's legislation that affects us. It's like, well, why would we tolerate that? But then of course there's the big, really big elephant in the room that nobody's mentioning in the media, and it is quite frightening actually when you talk about this. I mean, certainly with the BBC, BBC have just had this review recently, and they keep talking about how, you know, they're there to serve the people and they're impartial and there to inform and educate and all of this sort of stuff. The BBC hasn't mentioned TTIP at all. Nobody's mentioning TTIP at all. And if you don't know what TTIP is, I think you know, it's time you kind of started paying attention, because TTIP is a trade agreement, supposed trade agreement, between the EU and the United States, and it's going ahead regardless of, you know, what you think, as long as you're in the EU. And this is why the left are being slightly schizophrenic, because it's the people on the left who are going on about how terrible TTIP is, and they're right, it is terrible. And there's only one way to get out of it, and that's to leave the EU. Yet they're the ones telling us that they also want to stay in the EU. Well, I'm sorry, if you're in the EU, TTIP's going ahead. And what does TTIP mean? It means that large corporations, if they're losing money because of a policy that your government has democratically decided to go ahead with, they can then sue the government. You can't sue the government, I can't sue the government, Nobody else can, but apparently corporations are entitled to more human rights than human beings are. This has already started happening. The German government is currently being sued by a nuclear energy company in Sweden because Germany just has decided, because of the will of the people, to start using less nuclear energy. This is a corporate takeover, and it's not just here. This is happening in America too. The American government apparently can get sued by the same corporations if the American government decide to do something that they lose money on in the future. It's interesting at the moment that we've got this new packaging for cigarettes there, they're sort of being just plain, they've got pictures of lungs on and all this sort of stuff. I mean, I don't really agree with that, to be honest, but regardless, that is something our government want to do. Once this is signed, if they did that, I mean, maybe that's why it's going ahead now, but if they did that, tobacco companies could sue them and stop them doing it, and in secret courts that we don't get to know about. And we're being, this is being kept secret from us. Nobody knows about it. So maybe it's time to think about it for a bit. Maybe it's time to look at what Noam Chomsky's got to say. Take it away, Noam.
Investors, corporations, are given the right to sue governments, something you and I can't do, but a corporation can, to sue governments for harming their potentially future profits. You can figure out what that means, and such cases are already in the courts. They're not in the courts, they go to private trade adjudication groups made up largely of corporate representatives. They're already going on with NAFTA, and we can expect more of them.
So as you can see, this is a real concern, and this is going beyond just the general value assessment here, because what you really have is, are you an individualist or are you a collectivist? Do you value your identity as a country and as an individual, or do you want to become part of the sort of Borg, as it were, and be just a number amongst all these other states in what will eventually be the United States of Europe? Do you? I mean, after all, this isn't like in America, where there was much closer cultural union with the member states when that happened, and of course there was a lot of bloodshed before America finally became the United States of America. Do we want to do that? Well, I certainly don't. It's obviously up to you. We only had the EU directive recently with trying to ban semi-automatic rifles to sort of let us know how much power this body has over our lives and how little say we have in our lives. Even when our own MEPs are all against that legislation, we're really at the mercy of what other European countries want in that situation. Now lastly, of course, there's the biggest factor. Well, it's not the biggest factor, but a very large factor, and that's immigration. Now again, if you're talking about immigration, according to the BBC, you're obviously very ignorant and you're poorly educated, because of course any intelligent, educated person would be all for mass, uncontrolled immigration. But there is a problem with immigration, because the things with immigration, it does enrich our lives. It's great to be able to go and get a curry, or go and get some Polish food, or, see different people and different points of view and have discussions and all the rest of it. But the way immigration is supposed to work, the way it's supposed to work is you have a host nation, and foreign people come to the host nation, and the reason they come there is because they value the values of that nation. It's probably going to be more affluent economically, it's probably going to have more civil rights, that sort of thing. So people come here to enjoy that. And then, because they're in small numbers, over a period of a few generations, they get assimilated. It's not that they say, for instance, give up their religion, but they kind of treat their religion in the same kind of wishy-washy, moderate way that the host nation do. And so if you're talking about the UK, and, they culturally become absorbed by the host nation. If they don't do that, if there's enough of them, they come over in much larger numbers and they start ghettoising parts of the country. And you see parts of the country being annexed to that culture. We only need to look at Bradford and look at, for instance, the Pakistani community in Bradford. We have an annexed population there. The shared values of the people living in that region are completely alien to the rest of the country. And we can see this in Cologne in Germany, when Angela Merkel decided it was a great idea to allow 1 million refugees to just pour into the country. I mean, what was the result of that? young boys being raped in the swimming pool, women now having to, in Cologne, women now having to basically adopt the garments of Sharia law to a certain extent. And I know that sounds a bit mental, and I'm not saying that that Western German women are walking around in burqas, but they're covering up. They're covering up because if they don't cover up, people are going to sexually assault them. And this is, this isn't being kind of, this isn't kind of to placate anyone. This is a genuine security concern because, of course, people in Germany, like here, have no real way of defending themselves if they are attacked. So the best they can do, if you're a woman walking around in Cologne and to not get basically sexually assaulted, is to make sure that you're not showing your legs and you're not showing your breasts and that you're covered up. Does anyone see anything wrong with this? This is a bit of a problem. Now, of course, traditionally in the UK, we talk about immigration and we all say that the problem with the EU is anyone from the EU can come here, and there's people from other countries who've got skills that we want to come here and we can't choose, and so on and so forth. And you're absolutely right. But the trouble is, now that Angela Merkel's letting over 1 million people with a very foreign culture come into her country, they're on the way here. I mean, they're already in Calais. In fact, if I can find it, I'll put a clip in just here. But there's been riots in Calais, the police fleeing for their lives because they're being, attacked, basically, by the huge number of immigrants who are there. This is like a war of cultures here. This is no longer a small number of people who genuinely want to take on the culture of the host nation, to become a citizen of that nation. Like when people go to America and they take the Pledge of Allegiance and they say how much they love the American Constitution and they go there because of that. There's none of that now. This is a real problem here. And this isn't racist to say so. I mean, the United Kingdom is a great nation. We founded the European Convention of Human Rights. We are a modern secular nation. Why would we want to risk that and have all these people coming in who've got these completely alien values we have no control over? We need to plan our economy for the people. An economy is a tool to give people what they need. It isn't there just to kind of ever grow at any cost. That isn't what it's for. It's supposed to give us a good quality of life. And up until now, it's not been too bad for us, has it? National health care for everyone. We've had free education for everyone. Well, where's it going to go from here? So they're all things to think about. And I'd like to hear what you've got to say. I'll put a poll just here. Should we leave or should we... Hang on, let me just check this. No. Here, I think, should be there, little I. Should we leave or should we stay? Let me know what you think.